Under the Tang Dynasty, overall life in China improves. All right. So under the Tang Dynasty, overall life in China really got to improving. You see, after the Han Dynasty fell in 200, there was just fighting and pillaging and all sorts of no good stuff. Under the Tang Dynasty, though, these problems were solved. There were a couple things that Tang leaders allowed. Number one, they allowed Buddhism to be practiced by the people. You see, people coming out of a lot of pain and suffering in life would, of course, be attracted to Buddhism, which says that if you eliminate all your desires, then you will eliminate all your pain and suffering and enter into eternal bliss. That looks very attractive to people who are in pain and suffering and sorrow. Some did not like this because people were neglecting their life here on this planet and only focusing on the life that is to come. The Tang Dynasty's fix to this is Neo-Confucianism. Confucius was really about how you live your life here and now. Being a good citizen, a model citizen. With Neo-Confucianism, it allowed people to not only embrace the spiritual aspect of their life, but also be challenged to be good model citizens for China. A merit system began which would reward people for the good work that they did. There was also the civil service exam, which ensured that only the best people would get government jobs. This, of course, is going to make the government better for China. Under the Tang Dynasty, there was also great economic growth. One thing that they did was to give farmers land. This, of course, made the farmers happy and willing to grow more crops. As a result, they were able to have more advances like improved irrigation, new ways of growing crops, and a new rice that was able to grow faster, more abundantly, and grew well in poor soil. These changes meant more food. More food means you could feed more people, and so more people leads to a larger population. The population in China really expanded during this time. With the growth of population, you're going to have more trade. Under the Tang Dynasty, many roads and waterways were built and or fixed. This led to an increase in trade all throughout Asia. Merchants were able to travel and trade along all of these different waterways and really spread the culture throughout China. The Silk Road was now under control of the Tang Dynasty, and you really started to see a lot of activity once again on it. Items that were traded on the Silk Road are silk, tea, paper, steel, and porcelain. Porcelain is a fine clay that is heated to high temperatures and produces really nice plates, figurines, and vases. Countries would trade for these items with gold, silver, precious stones, and other types of wood. Also under the Tang Dynasty, the Chinese came up with a lot of new innovations and inventions. Rather than burning wood, which was becoming more and more scarce, the Chinese during this time found out about coal being a more efficient fuel for their furnaces, for cooking, and for making what they came up with, steel. They found out that if you heat iron hot enough in these furnaces, the carbon from the coal would get into the iron, and when it was cooled, it would produce steel. Steel is a lot stronger than iron. They would use the steel to make better weapons like armor and swords and shields and helmets, and they would also create better farming equipment. Another invention was the printing press. The Tang Dynasty were able to produce larger quantities of paper. With the larger quantities of paper, they were able to make books. But in order to copy these books, they had to do it by hand, which took lots of time. They came up with wood blocks and carved into it the Chinese character. With that, they were able to move these characters around and print the copies of the books onto these paper. The blocks were be able to use over and over again, which led to way more efficient printing of these books. As mentioned before, there was an increase in trade. With the increase in trade, there's a need for more money. There's only so much copper and only so many times they can stamp out these coins. And so during this time with the printing press, they were able to make paper currency. Chinese during this time also came up with gunpowder, which most definitely changed the way that wars were fought. They also used the gunpowder for fireworks. Otherwise, 4th of July would be boring. A lot less trees would be lit on fire. Poor Azusa. Both the Tang and the Song dynasties were considered the golden age of art and literature for the Chinese. With the invention of the printing press, this helped to really advance and spread Chinese culture and art throughout the land. Poetry was a way that these Chinese writers could express themselves. These poems had themes such as nature and the beauty of things, the changing of seasons, or the joy of having friendships. Other poems expressed the sadness of the shortness of life or friends leaving. Emo poems. In 1,000 years or so, I wonder how our culture is going to be seen based on the modern day poets that we have today. Some famous poets of this time are Li Bo. His poems often focused on nature. Another one is Du Fu. He was a civil servant who lived a hard life. His poems tended to be more on the, I would say, more important things in life, like social injustice or how the poor were treated. Alright, so that's all we have for today. Next section we're going to talk about the Mongols. Get ready for that.